So a couple of mistakes that you should avoid while answering pretty much any question during an interview, and it's as you'll see next, very much about the behaviors, about your attitude that you're employed towards answering that specific question. The first scenario is, for example, if I'd ask you, can you tell me about time when you failed? And you'd say, yeah, sure, I failed quite often, and I think failing is a great idea, and so on and so forth. So the idea is that you would come up with an approach. They say, yes, this is something very common, so on and so forth, instead of you actually focusing on answering and giving the best time that you failed that would satisfy the needs of the interviewer, right? So try less to impress in this case, but more to spend that initial time, that initial reaction into finding the best possible story that you have. And oftentimes, I'm saying this because oftentimes the people that they employ this approach, yes, I have plenty of these examples, they usually pick the wrong example or a very poor example to talk about during an interview. So just basically telling you here to not be taken away by the moment to go that route, that more reactive approach. The other bad idea, especially in a behavioral interview, is to start answering a question with, as I just said before in my previous example. Now, it's not always that this is a terrible idea, but most of the time people tend to use the same example that they previously used. And basically, if you use the same example over and over again in a job interview, it can and it will be perceived as a lack of experience or a lack of preparation during the job interview, and this is never a good thing, because who wants to hire a candidate that is not experienced and does not have diversity in their own answers. So even if you would want to touch maybe on a different milestone of the same story that you talked about, keep them separate. Talk about an entirely different experience, because what if your previous example was a terrible one? By saying that, as I just said in previous example, you just basically screwed up your performance from the beginning. So try to keep each example as a separate one. The other very problematic approach, and some people employ this because they don't have an immediate answer to a question, is to start with some general statements. For example, for managerial level roles, what's your management style? They would start with a general statement. My management style is like this and like that, and so on and so forth. When in fact, the idea is here that you must get specific of how your management style looks like. Like if there's no one example that could define your management style, no problem. You can find 2 or 3 or 4 of them. But the quicker you get into the bread and butter of your example, the better the better your example will end up sounding, and the better the behavior will look like in terms of behavioral interviewing. Another, just maybe half a sentence here, avoid long answers. Like, I'm not telling you what to say during a job interview, but 90% of the time the long answers could be much shorter ones, right? So it's not often that a topic deserves so much interest, so much explaining, that it's worthwhile 4 or 5 minutes to talk about. So keep this in mind next time when you feel like you're going too long. And last but not least, answering tell me about yourself. So answering tell me about yourself, it's usually starting with a power statement, something about yourself. But you should ideally, make it a compelling answer, an emotional answer. Like, for example, I just heard an answer from someone that I'm the type of person who, instead of reading romance at night, likes to read technical documentations of various APIs or research documents or whatever that's supposed to mean. And then, of course, you go with your experience and highlights and so on and so forth. But you would want to avoid an approach such as, okay, I'm a research scientist, I do machine learning, and some of my experience would be this, and that. Right? So you want to add a bit more meat to that power statement, to make it more compelling, to make it, relate to something. Right? So it sounds like a good answer. So these are all examples of how you would start, how you would go about crafting the best possible answers. And of course, what to focus on, especially of not only answering that, hey, I will have an answer as quickly as possible, no matter what that answer will be, but rather to try to find the best possible answer that you would give for the question that you're getting asked.